실전모의고사 1회 Number 18 Dear Miss Thompson, I trust this note finds you in good spirits. For the past 20 years, my husband and I have enjoyed our weekends at Meadowbrook Public Library, where the joy of reading together has become a treasured part of our lives. As my husband approaches retirement, we've decided to return to our roots in Cedar Falls. While packing for this new chapter, we've discovered an extensive collection of books we've accumulated over the years. We would be delighted if these beloved volumes could find a new home through your library's upcoming free book giveaway event. It would be a fitting way to share the joy we've experienced at Meadowbrook with others in the community. Please let us know the best way to coordinate this donation. We're deeply grateful for the wonderful experiences we've had at your library. Warmest regards, Susan and Robert Miller. Number 19. Once she strapped on the safety gear, Faith climbed up and stood at the edge of the high line. Oh man, if I don't do this right, I could kill myself. She was gripped by a nearly overwhelming fear. Her body shook as she tried to walk across the narrow line, and fell. Now she was dangling below the line. It took enormous strength to climb the rope to get back up. Trying a few more times, she fell again and again, each time climbing back up to try once more to walk across the line. The voice of fear kept crushing her confidence. She told herself, I'm not cut out for this. Gradually, though, Faith's fear transformed into resolution. After multiple falls wearing the harness, she knew she was safe. Still, attached to her leash and hanging below each line, she knew she was going to keep trying. She told herself that it was important to fall in order to reinforce the fact that she was safe. Number 20. When you start where your students are, you don't think in terms of should. If you want to motivate students to learn, first find out what currency they are spending, or what currency they value, and pay them in that currency. From there, you can teach them how to find the reward in other things. For many of our students, intrinsic motivation has to be developed. It comes only after they have experienced the pleasure of doing well and know the rewards of success. At the beginning, many of our students haven't experienced consistent academic success and are not convinced that it will bring any pleasure. In fact, academic success has been a source of pain for them because it has been heretofore an unachievable goal. This is why it is so important to start with what motivates them, and then, as they experience more success, help them transfer or become motivated by that success. Number 21. If truth is what we must seek, then we have both opportunities and responsibilities. We have opportunities to discover facts, which by virtue of being true are likely to be useful, certainly more useful than falsehoods. And we have responsibilities not to pollute the infosphere with falsehood and hot air. This requires a form of cognitive and linguistic literacy, an awareness of how language works on the mind and in social interaction. And it requires intellectual discipline. When we unthinkingly boost the signal of some misinformation, even just by liking a post we haven't fact-checked, The effect is like burning fossil fuels in our cars. As individuals, when we produce emissions, we feel that our singular contribution to the problem does not make a difference in the larger context. But of course, it would make a difference if only we acted collectively. In the same way, says legal scholar Ilya Soman, widespread public ignorance is a type of pollution that infects the political system. Number 22. Ambitious business development goals impose high pressure on all employees to demonstrate personal achievements and improvement. Companies often create a climate in which goals must be achieved at all costs. Managers will not tolerate subordinates bringing them bad news, demanding to see only successful results. In some organizations, a state of total fear of the management develops. It becomes almost impossible to admit any professional mistake without risking sanctions or punishment, including dismissal. Some employees cannot function well under this pressure, and to preserve the impression of success, they falsify their achievements and embellish reality. Hearing nothing but good news from their cowed employees, executives are under the illusion that everything is going well. When a crisis finally comes, it turns out that the real situation was being concealed to fit in with the impossible standards promoted in an organization and the demand to achieve success at any price. Number 23. Ambition, distraction, uglification, and derision. These are the playful names Charles Lutwidge Dodgson, a mathematics professor better known to us as Lewis Carroll, gave to the four arithmetical operations. Obviously, Carroll did not hold too many illusions about his pupils' calculation abilities. And perhaps he was right. While children easily acquire number syntax, learning to calculate can be a challenge. Children, and even adults, often err in the most elementary of calculations. Who can say that they never get 7 times 9 or 8 times 7 wrong? How many of us can mentally compute 113 minus 37 or 10 minus 24 in less than 2 seconds? Calculation errors are so widespread that far from stigmatizing ignorance, they attract sympathy when they are admitted publicly. I've always been hopeless at math. Many of us can almost identify with Alice's difficulty as she attempts to calculate while traveling through Wonderland. Let me see, 4 times 5 is 12, and 4 times 6 is 13, and 4 times 7 is... Oh dear, I shall never get to 20 at that rate. Number 24. Because archaeologists study material culture, it is easy to overemphasize the importance of physical objects versus social aspects of culture. Culture and worldview, however, are far removed from a list of material culture traits. Such traits can be symptomatic of different kinds of society, but they can never be definitive. Only social phenomena can define social formations. Many archaeologists are wary of studying social phenomena because they are not directly observable in the archaeological record. It is nevertheless possible to study social aspects of culture in the same way as natural scientists study unobservables, that is, through their material effects. Indeed, this is what archaeologists really do. We do not excavate technology, subsistence, or adaptation, for example. These concepts are no less abstract than worldview, and all are derived from theory. Even though we cannot observe prehistoric worldview directly, it was no less real. It guided technology, subsistence, and adaptive behavior, and in many cases caused it. Number 25. Average number of trips taken in the past 2 years. Note: data collected from February 27th and March 11th, 2024 in a survey of travelers from 5 countries who reported taking at least 1 trip in the past 2 years. The graph above shows the average number of domestic and international trips taken by various generations in the past 2 years. Overall, domestic trips were more frequent than international trips, with the largest gap between the two being among baby boomers. Millennials were the most active travelers, taking an average of 2.7 domestic trips and 2.7 international trips. Among the 4 generations, baby boomers took the fewest trips overall, averaging 3.4 trips, including 2.3 domestic trips and 1.1 international trips. Gen Z travelers averaged 2.3 domestic trips and 2.1 international trips, showing the smallest gap between the average numbers of domestic and international trips among all the age groups surveyed. Gen X took fewer domestic trips than all the other generations, but their combined average of domestic and international trips still exceeded 4. Number 26. Korny Chukovsky was born in St. Petersburg to a young peasant woman and her Jewish husband. Korny Chukovsky began his career as a journalist in Odessa, where he and his mother moved while he was still in school. He served as a foreign correspondent in London from 1903 to 1905, having taught himself English. Upon his return to Russia, he immersed himself in the literary scene, translating Walt Whitman and other Anglophone poets, as well as writing lively and penetrating essays on the leading Russian writers of the day, including the poet Alexander Blok, who was a personal friend. Between 1907 and 1913, the young Chukovsky flourished as a writer and intellectual. After the Russian Revolution, Chukovsky remained in the Soviet Union and concentrated on translation and children's poetry, for which he is now best remembered. In 1962, he received an honorary doctorate from Oxford University. Number 27. Going Green Rewards. This weekend, August 9 to 10th, every purchase at Magic Square Mall brings you closer to eco-friendly living. Don't miss our Green Rewards event. Spend $30 and exchange your receipts for a beautiful potted plant. Spend $60 and exchange your receipts for a free Green Workshop Pass. Spend $120 and exchange your receipts for a stylish folding lunchbox, perfect for eco-friendly meals. Bring 10 plastic bottle caps and get a discount coupon. Green Workshop at the Event Hall. August 9th, Saturday, 1 p.m. Plant Pot Recycling Workshop. 3 p.m. Fabric Bag Workshop. August 10th, Sunday, 1 p.m. Carpet Upcycling Workshop. 3 p.m. Reversible Hat Workshop. Present your workshop pass at the event hall entrance to participate. The workshop is first come, first served. Limited slots available. Number 28. Coastal Marine Mammal Center Field Trip. Join us for the Coastal Marine Mammal Center's most popular field trip. Students will learn how marine mammals are rescued and nursed back to recovery to give them a second chance at life. Program: Marine Mammal Rescue, Recovery, and Release Tour, 2 hours. Features: experience a multimedia presentation on the challenges faced by marine mammals and watch live demonstrations of rescue procedures. Important information: open to students aged 15 to 18. Group size: limit of 25 individuals per venue. Field trip photography notice: please be aware that photographs will be taken for use on the Coastal Marine Mammal Center's website. If you prefer not to be photographed, please inform the field trip coordinator in advance. How to register: email the application to marine@center.org or contact our field trip coordinator at 375-259-0134. Ensure that you complete the registration at least 1 week before the field trip. Number 29. There are several fields of expertise found in the intersection of graphic design and science that are about visualizing complex information. The main purpose of this field is to make information accessible. There is a direct line from diagramming to information visualization and design. Diagrams are as old as advanced human culture. One could say we draw diagrams with our hands when gesturing. However, diagrams developed to visualize even more complex issues. Florence Nightingale was an early user of diagrams to communicate statistics. Her diagrams are an excellent example of how quantitative data is made accessible with visualization to trigger action and change. In our times, it developed into a universe of advanced diagrams described by, for example, Tufte. With the rise of the computer information, visualization crystallized in several streams, one based on graphic design and the other driven by scientific visualization. Rich quantitative information that before was impossible to interpret was now visualized in a way that made it possible to identify patterns and phenomena in the data. Information visualization is developing its aesthetics and as a craft, and one might say, an art form. Number 30. Ethics is about our thinking process. The experience of learning about ethics can be frustrating for students who expect to walk out of class armed with clear-cut answers for how to deal with different types of problems. But in fact, such direct answers are rare in ethics. Instead, ethics is concerned with asking the right questions. The focus is on the quality of the deliberative process and not on the outcome. This can be challenging because so much of Western culture is goal-oriented. We care deeply about good performance, about results, about the bottom line, often with only passing interest in how we achieve those goals or what we do to attain success. But expecting ethics to provide the necessary correct answers usually just leads to moralizing, making broad, often unsubstantiated claims about a course of action that some will accept as reflecting their moral beliefs and others won't. Most ethical dilemmas don't present any fully acceptable solutions and instead offer several options that are unsatisfactory in some way. The trick is to figure out which one is most justifiable as you see it and which embodies key values. Number 31. If you go to the store to buy a gallon of milk, you probably think of milk as the product, and in many ways, it is. But if the producer of that milk thought as you did, they would expect you to show up at a spigot with a jug you could fill with milk. But, in fact, that gallon of milk, the bottle it comes in, the labeling on the bottle, the placement of the bottle on the shelf, the expiration date, the additives or lack thereof, the preservatives or lack thereof, and even the care of the cows from which the milk comes are all part of the product. Consumers may say they want or need milk, but providing a spigot that delivers milk does not actually satisfy most consumers, because what they really want is milk that is convenient to get from store to home. All the other pieces of the product, such as labeling, expiration, and even ingredients, also speak to the details of what consumers of the milk truly want. In this example, we refer to milk as the core product, but not the whole product. Number 32. The default mode network, DMN, is one neural network. It is located in both the prefrontal and parietal lobes in the brain. This network of interconnected brain regions is active when you are not focused on the outside world, but rather focused internally. It is who you are when untouched by stimuli. This is the place where memories, a collection of events and knowledge about yourself, are housed. It's known to be the home of mind wanderings, dreams, and daydreaming. It helps you optimize what you need to remember and what you need to forget. It aids in envisioning your future. It's a catalyst for wondering, and it's also the place where you think about things that don't have an explicit goal. When you're making art, how you choose to express yourself comes in part from this network. The DMN is a filter for what you think is beautiful or not beautiful, memorable or not, meaningful or not, and it's what helps to make the arts and aesthetics a very personal experience for each of us. Number 33. Though there can be great advantages attached to radical designing, there are also often new kinds of risks that arise. One such example is the introduction of the jet engine. Not very long after the jet engine had been introduced to the world of civil aviation, two such aeroplanes, with the rather unfortunate name Havilland Comet, crashed. The problem did not so much reside in the engines themselves as in the fact that jet-powered planes flew at much higher altitudes than previous aircraft had done. This meant that cabins had to be pressurized to make flying comfortable for the passengers. As a result, some points of the fuselage were subjected to greater stresses than before. That, in turn, led to metal fatigue and ultimately to disaster. What this proves is that existing frameworks designed to safeguard certain moral values, in this case safety, cannot be automatically transferred to radical designs. When choosing between normal and radical designs, there are also, therefore, moral considerations alongside the technical considerations. Number 34. Contrary to predictions of a U-shaped curve between exercise dose and mortality, there is little solid evidence that extreme levels of exercise are either harmful or additionally healthy. A number of studies have found that elite athletes, especially those who do endurance sports, live longer and require less medical care than non-athletes. In case you're worried that athletes might have better genes than the rest of us, thus protecting them from the rigors of extreme exercise, a study that followed nearly 22,000 ordinary non-athletes for 15 years found that the highest dose exercisers did not have higher or lower rates of death, including by heart disease, than those who exercised moderately. An even larger analysis of more than 600,000 individuals found that extremists who exercised more than 10 times the standard recommended dose of 150 minutes per week did not have significantly higher rates of death than those who exercised between 5 and 10 times the standard dose. Number 35. A mighty immune cell trying to support a cell that is unhealthy and threatened from its mitochondrial dysfunction is made completely ineffective. The immune cell cannot halt the damaging factors and the lack of resources resulting from the unnatural environment of our modern industrial world. An immune cell can't stop you from drinking a soda, filter your water, turn off the stress-inducing notifications on your phone, prevent you from eating hormone-disrupting pesticides and microplastics, or get you to go to sleep earlier. So the immune cell will use the tools at its disposal. It will recruit more immune cells, send out more inflammatory signals, and just keep fighting until things resolve. But the problems don't resolve because the damaging environmental inputs never resolve. This is the root of chronic inflammation. Number 36. Every culture provides its members with a series of lessons. Among the lessons learned are how to say hello and goodbye, when to speak or remain silent, how to act when angry or upset, where to focus the eyes when functioning as a source or a message encoder and receiver or message decoder, how much to gesture, how close to stand to another, and how to display emotions such as happiness or rage. By instructing its members, culture guides behavior and communication, showing members how to act, think, talk, and listen. In effect, culture is ubiquitous in every aspect of our lives. Its influence passes from our family, friends, schooling, traditional and social media, and rites and rituals. It is in the food we eat, the music we listen to, the art we appreciate, the games we play, and the friends we make. It is our entire social interaction with the world that shapes the cultural being we are, and which in turn we also will pass on. Number 37. Biodiversity protection poses a challenge to corporate social responsibility because damage to ecosystems is poorly understood, often lacks visibility, and generally has indirect linkages to business activity. Further, a high degree of stakeholder engagement and local responsiveness is required to address biodiversity protection. Biodiversity loss can, of course, be visible and result from direct effects of business on the environment, such as the loss of marine life from an oil spill. Corporate responsibility is evident in such a case. Responsibility is more difficult to identify when the environmental impact of business activity has low visibility and is diffused on a global scale. Biodiversity loss that occurs through the global spread of invasive species provides such an example. Companies are likely to be skeptical of their indirect impact on the environment and to demand sufficient scientific evidence before acknowledging responsibility. As a result, the burden of proof is generally placed on the scientific community so that environmental degradation, such as biodiversity loss, often goes unrecognized as a responsibility of firms. In the absence of legislation or other enforceable means to influence firm behavior, there may be little accountability for environmental damage that accrues while sufficient evidence is gathered. Number 38. When children explain why improbable events could not occur in real life, their justifications are similar to those provided for impossible events. They claim a person couldn't own a lion for a pet because it might bite you or because you could own a cat instead. These justifications imply that children are not searching for principled, law-like reasons why the event cannot occur. If they did, they would realize that no such reasons exist. Instead, they attempt to imagine how the event might occur, given what they know about lions and pets, and report on the mental roadblocks that pop into mind. Lions are too big. They live far away. They eat other animals. They need a lot of space. They make a lot of noise, and so forth. These are reasons why owning a lion would be difficult, but not reasons why it would be impossible. And children must learn to distinguish the two. Indeed, as children begin to distinguish improbable events from impossible ones, they also begin to provide better justifications for their judgments. Searching for a reason why an event is impossible may yield the realization that it's possible after all. Number 39. Suppose an investigator conducted a randomized experiment to answer the casual question, does one's looking up to the sky make other pedestrians look up too? She found a strong association between her looking up and other pedestrians looking up. Does this association reflect a causal effect? Well, by definition of a randomized experiment, confounding bias is not expected in this study. However, there was another potential problem. The analysis included only those pedestrians that, after having been part of the experiment, gave consent for their data to be used. Shy pedestrians, those less likely to look up anyway, and pedestrians in front of whom the investigator looked up, who felt tricked, were less likely to participate. Thus, participating individuals in front of whom the investigator looked up, a reason to decline participation, are less likely to be shy, an additional reason to decline participation, and therefore more likely to look up. That is, the process of selection of individuals into the analysis guarantees that one's looking up is associated with other pedestrians looking up, regardless of whether one's looking up actually makes others look up. Number 40. Bias, the inclination of prejudice towards or against a person, group, object, or position, is an inherent part of society and of how human beings operate. As subjective individuals, we are unable to grasp anything we encounter in a purely objective manner, but always do so through the filter of our personal knowledge and experience. This filter, in turn, constitutes a reflection of our upbringing, education, cultural exposure, personality, and numerous other traits. In this broad sense, bias is not necessarily bad. Yet, under certain conditions, bias can be unfair or lead to discrimination. AI systems are developed by human beings and fed data collected and shaped by human beings. It is hence no surprise that their decisions also reflect the individual and societal biases of their creators and users, for better or worse. It is thus crucial to address this risk, even if unjust bias in machines is not always easily perceptible, in particular if it slips in through proxies rather than through legally protected criteria such as gender, age, or ethnicity. Bias isn't always harmful when it comes to understanding the world, but AI systems mirror the biases of their human developers, requiring our careful attention to prevent unfair or discriminatory results. Numbers 41 and 42. Many crucial functions of the self involve volition, making choices and decisions, taking responsibility, initiating and inhibiting behavior, and making plans of action and carrying out those plans. The self exerts control over itself and over the external world. To be sure, not all human behavior involves planful or deliberate control by the self. And in fact, recent work has shown that a great deal of human behavior is influenced by automatic or non-conscious processes. But undoubtedly, some portion involves deliberate, conscious, controlled responses by the self, and that portion may be disproportionately important to the long-term health, happiness, and success of the individual. Even if it were shown that 95% of behavior consisted of lawful, predictable responses to situational stimuli by automatic processes, psychology could not afford to ignore the remaining 5%. As an analogy, cars are probably driven straight ahead at least 95% of the time, but ignoring the other 5%, such as by building cars without steering wheels, would seriously compromise the car's ability to reach most destinations. By the same token, the relatively few active, controlling choices by the self greatly increase the self's chances of achieving its goals. And if those few steering choices by the self are important, then so is whatever internal structure of the self is responsible for it. Numbers 43 through 45. Once upon a time in a small village, there lived two neighbors. One was a kind young man named Tom. The other was a grumpy old man named Mr. Grumbles. In Mr. Grumbles' garden, there was an apple tree with a beautiful golden apple. He would spend most of his time peering out his window, watching the village with suspicious eyes, being worried someone might take his golden apple. One sunny morning, Mr. Grumbles noticed that his precious golden apple was missing from his tree. Without thinking, he started telling everyone who would listen that Tom must have stolen it. "The young fellow next door is a thief," he declared, his voice loud and angry. Word spread quickly through the village, like leaves caught in a strong wind. Soon the sheriff came and arrested poor Tom, who was confused and upset. Tom tried to explain that he didn't steal the apple, but no one believed him. After a while, he was finally released as there was no proof of his guilt. Angry at what had happened, Tom sued Mr. Grumbles for wrongly accusing him. In the village court, Mr. Grumbles told the judge, "They were just comments. They didn't harm anyone." The judge told him, "Write all the things you said about Tom on a piece of paper. Cut them up, and on the way home, throw the pieces of paper out. Tomorrow, come back to hear the sentence." The next day, the judge told Mr. Grumbles, "Before receiving the sentence, you will have to go out and gather all the pieces of paper that you threw out yesterday." He replied, "I can't do that. The wind must have scattered them, and I won't know where to find them." The judge then replied, "The same way, simple comments may destroy the honor of a man to such an extent that one is not able to fix it." Mr. Grumbles' face fell as he realized his mistake and sincerely apologized to Tom.